Hey there everyone, Video Game Cabinet here doing a video review on Final Fantasy 16 for the PS5. I just finished this a couple hours ago. I spent the last 3 weeks, thereabouts, putting in 68 hours according to my PlayStation profile, completing all the optional side quests that I could find, and then beating the final boss of the game. Final Fantasy 16, in my opinion, was a wonderful RPG with fun battles, soaring production values, and a sweeping narrative that stands with the strongest in the series. The gameplay continues the series' recent move towards being a bit more action-oriented, and I will say a lot of the RPG elements are simplified here compared to the much older games, and I do wish there was more of a sense of teamwork during the battles. Clive feels pretty much like a one-man army, although there's technically a couple other party members on screen fighting. You don't have control over them, you just have control over Clive and a little bit with his dog, unless you turn on an auto item that I was using. And there are weapon and spell upgrades, but they're just for Clive. The fighting, though, is still very fun. If you look at it as an action game, it's not quite as great as something like the fighting in the Bayonetta series or Ninja Gaiden on Xbox, but it's still really fun. And the soundtrack has my favorite battle themes in the entire series. When you're fighting normal enemies and during some of the boss battles, some of the lower boss battles, this just has a very, very good music when you're fighting. The overworld map has points that you fast travel to, and it is a very linear game at first, kind of like Final Fantasy X was, from what I remember. But certain sections, certain points that you fast travel to are part of the same little map, which makes the areas feel a little bit more connected, like a traditional overworld, albeit a small one. And thankfully, there are plenty of side quests to give the game the much needed dose of RPG flavor. The side quests for me were fun. They were brief. You could finish them each quickly, and they deepened my understanding of the world's culture, and they added a lot to the overall adventure, and I don't think you should skip any of them. I think they were all really good. Even though some RPG elements of the gameplay are simplified compared to older games, where FF16 truly shines is in its narrative. Right from the get-go, the story pulled me in. The first couple hours, I did notice some inspiration from Game of Thrones, but after that little 2-hour intro, the story very much goes its own way for the rest of the 60 plus hours that I was playing. FF16 does a great job of integrating old Final Fantasy tropes into the lore, specifically summon spells. Summon spells, called icons here, play a huge role in the story in that some of the characters are born with the ability to use them, and they're called dominants, and other people are born as bearers of magic and treated as low-class citizens compared to normal humans and dominants. The story has powerful themes of class, family, revenge, and social reform. There are long stretches of world building and politics, but it's all very engrossing. I was into it the whole time. And when the dramatic payoffs hit, they hit hard. There are some truly epic showdowns between the heroes and the villains in this game. Let me tell you. The scope of the story and the complexity of the characters actually makes the older games feel a little bit dated, if I'm going to be honest. Final Fantasy 16 has some of my favorite villains and favorite heroes in the whole series. Clive, Joshua, Jill, Dion were all great heroes brought to life by powerful voice actors. And Benedicta, Annabella, Kupka, and Barnabas were all great villains with deep motives to their evil plans. I thought they did a really good job. So even though some of the RPG elements of the gameplay were simplified a bit here, the story really enthralled me. I'm going to give Final Fantasy 16 a 9.5 out of 10. I thought it was really good. So that's my review, 9.5. I still say that Final Fantasy 6 and 7 are my favorites. Those are the two 10 out of 10s in the series. From what I remember, Final Fantasy 10, I think I like this game about as much as I remember liking FF10. That one I may have given a 10 back, 22 something years ago when I played it, but it's probably worth more like a 9.5, just like this one is. Final Fantasy 5, I remember giving a 9.5. Final Fantasy 4 would either be 9.95, Final Fantasy 1, 9.95. Final Fantasy 2 and 3 I recently gave 8.5s. Those were very good, but so this one is somewhere around the middle of greatness there. It's a really, really worthy entry in the series. It's not to be missed. If you have a PS5, I know the series got a little bit off track with fans. I never played through 12, 13, and 15, and I never played any of 11 and 14 because those were online. But the little bit I played of 12 and 13 kind of turned me off a little bit, and 15 didn't sound so great from what I heard. Eventually, I'm going to have to play those and see. But this one really seems like a return to form to what I remember being so great about, most of the old ones, 1 through 10. What else? One other thing I want to mention is this is probably the easiest game in the series. It really wants you to win the battles because it is so focused on the narrative. And thank God there's this button. You pause during the cutscenes and you press the middle square button, and it brings up this thing. I think it's called Active Time Lore. You gotta milk that. It makes notes of what's going on in case you forget who a character is or what somebody's political motive is. And it really, really makes the very complicated politics and world building of this story very well to digest. And it's great. It's, like I said earlier, it's all enthralling. I was totally into it from start to finish. It never got boring, but it is a lot to digest. So I strongly suggest that you pull up the Active Time Lore notes that they have when you pause during cutscenes. So, anyways, as a little bonus, I'd like to go into some heavy spoilers. So this is your big warning. We're about 8.5 minutes in. I'm going to spoil the shit out of the story right now, just going over key points that I remember really affecting me. So that is your warning. If you haven't played the game, non-spoiler has ended. Now I'm going to go into spoilers. So here we go. The very beginning of the game, I want to touch on a little bit more. I remember that there was an opening shot that reminded me a bit of the Fellowship of the Ring with Gandalf battling the Balrog, I think it was, but this was Ifrit battling the Phoenix, and they actually copied a shot from that movie, and then like 5 minutes later it flashes back to when you're a kid with Clive and Joshua, and it's introducing them, and like the mom is kind of uneasy towards Clive, but she really loves Joshua. It reminded me a little too much of Game of Thrones in that 1 hour, just the 1 hour. And then towards the end of that intro, again, I'm spoiling heavy here, certain family members die and you're sent off somewhere to go fight, and then it time jumps 13 years. And that reminded me very much of Dragon Quest V, which I played this year, and because there's time jumps in that game, if you've played it, and certain drama happens. But I thought at first, like, well, after that 2-hour intro, I'm like, well, if you're going to copy from anyone, copy from the best, right? So I was still into it. But then right after that 2-hour intro, I got to say, the story completely goes its own way. Like when you run into Jill, your childhood friend, I was like, all right, this is going its own way. And then you run into Sid. He was a great character. I was like, all right, I'm going with this. It's really good. And it just continued to impress me more and more the further I got. Like I said earlier, there was some slowing down to explain some politics and stuff, but I was still into it. And when the payoffs hit, they hit hard. Some of the big payoffs that I was really, really into, the showdown with Benedicta, where Clive takes her powers away and she's really sad. Like, that was crazy. And then I didn't understand at first how she was able to turn into a demon or something when he fought her a second time. But I guess she drank some ether crystals or something. I don't know. Lots of stuff going on in the story. And then when you go back with Jill to face her old captors, the priest, and that religion that was not treating dominance with respect, something like that was really interesting. And then her getting her revenge. The showdown with Kupka, I thought, was really powerful. That was around like the middle of the game, and I remember feeling like, God, if this was the ending of the game, it would have equaled about the scope of the older games, but no, it just kept on going way after that. But the showdown with Kupka, where he's like, well, I wanted to kill the Sid, but I'll just have to settle on you, Clive. And he's like, oh no, it was me that killed Benedicta. And he's like, all right. And then they throw down. It's really, really amazing stuff. Really high level drama for a video game, at least. I was really, really into it. Just the level of hatred between Clive and Kupka in that scene was really, really dramatic and really, really well done. And later on, Dion, he was a great character. Him being gay and just how he felt like kind of an outcast from his dad and the stepmom, and then the new son, I think his name was Olivier or something. He was being stepped over as emperor, and later on that showdown with Dion accidentally killing his dad to try to get to the son, then Annabella just losing her shit, and that son being possessed by Ultima, just everything with Clive and Joshua meeting together finally after all those years and fighting with Dion, the Bahamut spell. That imagery and that music during that whole battle was just incredible. And the mom explaining why she betrayed her family and how she was just trying to preserve the bloodline. And like, it was at that point that the game really, really hit me of just how complex and deep the characters have gotten in the series, since the older games that I've played. Really impressive stuff. And later on, a big moment that I loved was the sea chase when you're on board the ship chasing after Jill, who's been captured by Barnabas, and just him standing atop his ship with his theme music playing, and the two ships attacking each other. That was incredible. The romance between Jill and Clive was really good. And killing the Ultima at the end, being the main villain, who the way they explain it, I guess he's he created humans and he's trying to reset everything. In short, like the whole thing of challenging God, I've seen that in other RPGs like the Xenosaga games, stuff like that, and even I think it a little bit in some of Final Fantasy X, if I remember correctly. But it's a little bit different here because Clive points out that Ultima is just like the humans. He's just as selfish, and he's just about self-preservation. I thought that was interesting. And it was a really, really good ending with, Jill noticing that star went out, and she could assume that Clive had met his end. I guess that was the Ifrit losing its light or something. I'm not too sure, but very, very interesting, beautiful imagery all throughout the game. So anyway, those are my heavy, heavy spoiler thoughts for the whole game. Let's get a discussion going if you want to put spoiler warning in the comments. But yeah, so that's it. Overall, I really, really enjoyed Final Fantasy 16. I thought it was really, really good. And yeah, I'm glad that's off the backlog and it's on to something else now. Have a nice day.